Hi friends, another day, another toy loom unboxing. Today's toy loom is a little bit different to the other toy loom series that I already have here on YouTube. You know that I love to make weaving as accessible for people as possible, for people in all kinds of circumstances, and that's what these kind of videos are all about. Today's video is not sponsored at all. I bought this loom with my own money and I'm going to set it up and start weaving with everything that comes in the box so that you can know what to expect if you decide to buy this loom for yourself. Okay, let's get on with the unboxing. Now, I did already open this because I thought you probably didn't really need to see me struggle through getting all of the tape undone. So, today's loom is the Melissa and Doug frame loom. They call it a multicraft loom. I love the boxing. It looks so fun. If I was a kid opening this, I would just be overjoyed. It has all the beautiful colors on it, and then on the back it shows you some of the things that you can do. It says what is in the box. It's an extra large frame, comes with rainbow yarn, easy to adjust frame size, illustrated instructions and craft ideas, weave in ribbon, beads, fabric to create original projects. Sounds great. Let's open it up. Now, if you are interested in having a closer look at this loom, I'm going to link it down below for you. It is a lower cost loom, but I wouldn't say that it's exactly a cheap loom. So, a bit of cardboard packing in here. There's a little bit of assembly required, I believe, but I don't think it's going to be very difficult. So, that's all that's in the box so far. So, I've got the frame, and the frame has notches in it at the top and the bottom, obviously for the warp. It's got these pegs, which I'm guessing are for stability at the edges. This peg or this stick is actually kind of warped. Like it's wonky, very wonky. Okay, we'll see how that goes. But I'll just pop it in there for now. What I want to do next, obviously, is open up the cardboard box and see what's inside, because they did say there would be instructions and there should be yarn, etc. in here as well. Ooh. Okay, they said rainbow yarn, they meant it. So obviously this is going to be an acrylic yarn. It's not going to be a natural fibre, but that seems quite nice. It's very thick, which is great for obviously starting out on a loom like this. And it's also soft, which is always a bonus. So there's two big balls of that yarn, which is great. Then I've got some strips, which they are actually on the box. They're just like printed cardboard strips in case you have a child around who wants to do some quick paper weaving. More paper strips there. That'd be fun to do with a child or a grandchild. You could probably help them out with the warp. All right, there's actually quite a bit in this box. There's also some string. It looks kind of like a cotton string. I can't say for sure whether it's cotton or not, but it does feel like it. That would be for a stronger warp. Then I've got a bag with a giant wooden needle in it. Hey, I like that. I could always use a giant wooden needle. Who couldn't? What else have we got in here? We've got some basic tools and a couple of bolts and screws. And then a couple of extra wooden pieces here. That would be the stand component. Yes, because this loom does stand up. All right, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to look over the instructions, which is always a good idea to do once you get something new. And I will also start putting the stand together, and you can watch me do that. So putting on the little feet here seems pretty straightforward. It gives you everything you need in this little packet. So I've got the two little nuts and bolts there, and I've got a little Allen key thing here. And so I'm just going to stand up the loom. I can tell the correct way for it to stand by a couple of indicators. First, it says Melissa and Doug across here, so you know if you're standing that up towards you and that's reading correctly, then you're standing it on the right end. But also on the bottom ends that don't have the feet on yet, they are finished with there's just the piece of wood there. Whereas at the top, they're kind of finished off with, they're just kind of screwed in there. So it looks finished already. So all I have to do is pop these legs, and I don't think that there's any particular way that they need to go. Okay, just like that. And then I need to grab the little nut and barrel, I think it's called, and just unscrew that from the end. Now this long screw goes through the bottom. And then I need to position this little nut on the inside so that the screw kind of screws into that on the inside. So I can screw it in by hand to a certain degree. And then I'll have to grab the little Allen key, if that's what you call it. I'm not particularly up with all these things. And screw that in till it tightens. It's pretty straightforward, but we'll have a little closer look at the second one just so that you can see a little bit more what I'm doing. So I've got the first leg on. Now I need to get the second leg on. So the screw comes with this little thing on the end, a barrel of some sort, barrel screw maybe it's called. And so I just need to take that off to begin with. Okay, so that's separate now. And then there's a little hole at the side right here, as well as a hole at the end. So it's the side hole that this little barrel piece goes into. And I don't think it really matters which way it goes. So I'm just going to pop that in. And then I'll position my leg at the bottom of that and line that up with the hole that's at the bottom that doesn't have anything in it yet. And then I can pop my screw in there, and that's going to go through the middle of that barrel piece that we put in. Easy peasy. As far as loom assembly goes, this is extremely simple. You can grab your little Allen key, which fits really nicely. Thankfully, the screws are a proper metal. You know, sometimes you get those screws that just shred when you try to tighten them, and they're horrible. These are good. So I'm going to make that nice and tight, and I'll tighten up the other side as well. That's pretty tight actually. That's as far as I can go. So that's it as far as the assembly goes. And then if you look in the weaving book, it shows you different configurations that you can do depending on how large the piece is that you want to weave. I thought it might be useful at this point too if I just grab my tape measure and give you the actual measurements of this loom, because it can be a little bit hard to get perspective on camera. So from edge to edge, that's 16.5 inches. And from top to bottom, should we measure the frame? The frame's 20 inches, and then to the bottom is just over 22 inches. So it's a fair size. Now, when it's talking about moving the configurations depending on what you want to weave, These sidebars here, they can come out, and there's another hole right here, and it shows you this in the instruction booklet as well. So you can actually take out one of the sticks at the side and put it in here, and then you've got a smaller size loom. Further to that, you can also bring this bar down, which we will do. So at the back, it's got these little tighteners. They're just plastic tighteners. And they're tightening onto a screw. So I'll just take that off entirely. And turn that back around so you can see what I'm all about. Okay, so I'll just pull the screws out, and then if I push that bar down, it's a little bit stiff on this separator here. Just because it hasn't been moved before, there's nothing wrong with it. Pop that back in there, pop that back in there, and then I can turn that around and put the little pieces back on, the little tighteners, and then I could tighten that up properly. I'm actually going to move that again, so I won't tighten it up too much right now. So you can see that the frame is really shaky, but I haven't tightened up these tightening pieces here. So I'm going to do that in a sec once I get set up for what I want to do with the warp. So a couple of my first observations are, I'm pretty disappointed that this stabilizer is so wonky, and I don't know if you can see on camera. You should be able to, because it's so darn wonky. It's like unmistakably noticeable, whereas this one is completely straight, this rod here. So if I was a finicky person, or if I had bought this loom for somebody else, or if I really wanted to use this loom for myself a lot, I would be sending it back to, or I would be asking them to send me a straight dowel, please. Thank you very much. Because that's really not good enough. If that's a warp stabilizer, then that doesn't provide much stability. So anyway, I am going to leave that there because I want to warp a shorter width, but I'm going to move this bar back up because I want a longer width of warp. So pretty simple to do, just unscrew those again. And I said they were plastic, but they do actually have some metal inside, which makes them a little bit more durable for the task. And then I'll just put that back up to the top. Too difficult to see what I'm doing from the side. Let's see. Put those rods back in where they belong. Okay. Now tighten these up and see how nice and tight we can get this frame to be. Because you don't want to be using a frame loom that's wobbling all over the place. That's not going to be a good experience. So there are 4 of those tightening knobs, and I'm tightening them all up now. Getting ready to warp. Okay, that's way better. It's actually very sturdy now. I want to double check at the bottom whether I can do any tightening on these bottom screws now that I've tightened up everything else. Right, that's as tight as it goes. That one can be tightened a little. All right, great. So my idea I was thinking that I would just use the yarn that came with the loom so that I can test it out properly and tell you all what I think. And then, so I'm going to use that for warp and for weft. And I was thinking that I would try to weave a sort of a phone pouch kind of thing. So just holding my phone there, I was thinking of weaving up a little ways. They've got a few project ideas in the booklet, like a little mug rug, a little pouch, a little carry-all purse, and some picture tapestries. So that's for you'd be using the string with these strips. As I said, might be fun for some kids to do. And they even have instructions for a scarf. Now I'm thinking, they're saying that from here to here is long enough for a scarf. I'm thinking it'd have to be a very small neck to be a scarf long enough to get around it. They do show a picture in the booklet of a child wearing a scarf, but it looks kind of longer than I would have thought that was there. Anyway, I'm not going to weave a scarf. I'm going to try to do a pouch, and so we'll see how we go with that. As I pointed out, they've got the weaving needle included. And so all you really need additionally are some scissors, and you might need to untangle your yarn, as I'm going to have to do, because they are somehow connected in a way that doesn't really make sense to me. I think I'm just going to cut one ball from the other. I do like the look of this yarn. I think it's quite nice. It would be quite enticing for a child, I think. So I'm going to start warping. The warping is going to be pretty simple as well, but I'll take you through it step by step so that you can see exactly what you have to do. Okay, so for the warp, obviously you'll want a continuous ball of yarn, and just take the end of the yarn. We're going to tie it around the top of this peg, and I'm just going to use a kind of a double knot. Then I'm going to follow the notches. So the first one, I could go here or I could go here. I'm going to go here because that lines up more with the stabilizer at the side. So going down to the corresponding notch at the bottom. And what I want to do here is really try to get a good tension, because this is sort of my only chance to get the tension on the loom. There's no way of tightening it up after you've actually warped. So while you're warping it, that is the time to tension. Okay, so I'm going to pull that down to that corresponding slot, and then I'm going to loop it underneath the block of wood into the next slot. So it's just looping around and then coming straight back up in this kind of shape. Boom, 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 boom. So up to the next corresponding slot, which is that one, and then I'm going to go, instead of underneath, I'm going over the top. And you'll notice that these little wooden pieces, they are actually notched on the top and the bottom for the yarn to settle into there. So I'm going around, and then I'm just holding that there so it doesn't jump off, and then back down to the next available slot. So I'm not going back into the same one, I'm going into the next one. And I'm going around and then up. So there's no time here that you take the yarn like underneath the loom and back up. It's all just kind of going in that U shape. So we go back up towards the top. We're looking at the next slot that's available. Going over into the ridge that's on top. You can pop your finger there just so that it doesn't go anywhere, and then back down. Coming up to the next slot, going over and into that slot. And I'm pulling that nice and tight. I want tension on this. And then down to the next available slot there. And then underneath the block and up the side to the next slot at the top, and down I'm giving it a tug in between to keep it nice and firm. This is a fast way to warp a loom. Okay, so I finish off down the bottom, and the dowel, so I could finish off down the bottom here, but there's nowhere for me to tie the dowel because it's not poking down at the bottom. So I've got two choices here. I could either take this warp thread back up to the top and tie it around this dowel if I wanted to lose that little extra bit there, or I could bring it down and I could sort of take it around the leg here and tie it that way. Let's see, I think I'm going to do that. So to do that, I just need a little bit of extra length of yarn when I'm cutting it. And then I'll just need to, I've taken it in a slot and then down behind, and then I'm going to take it around and knot it that way. I think it would be really more stable knotting it at the top there, but I just wanted that extra warp thread in there. And you have to be able to knot this and tighten it and keep it tight at the bottom. I don't think that's going to work out because the acrylic yarn is just slipping terribly. So it doesn't want to knot there. So I'll just cut that and I'll take it back up to the top and I'll knot it off there where I know it's going to be okay. Bit fiddlier doing it up here because there's not a lot of room. All right, so that's warped and the tension seems pretty good. So I'm happy with that. So the instructions aren't that clear for actually using the yarn, but as far as I can see, you just wind off a bit of yarn, weave that through and then wind off more yarn. So I'll start with that, I guess. And so it's just a ball that's unlikely to tangle. It's a very thick yarn. So I'm going to take my giant needle and just thread that through. And then it's basically just starting on one side. So all of the weaving you're going to be doing is manual because there's no shedding device. You can't open and close sheds with this. And the idea is to use the dowels at the sides and go around them so that they help to keep your edges straight, because with this type of loom the there's a lot of draw-in, and as I said, we can't tighten our tension once we've warped and all of that, so we'll see how we go. So I'm going to start by just going over under and I'll pull that yarn right through. So I guess you don't want to pull off too much at once because you'll get tangles, because that's a lot of yarn to pull through. And I'll leave a tail at the end because it's always a good idea to leave a tail so that you can either sew it in afterwards or you could weave it in if you wanted to. And then you want to go around that separator. So I should have gone around that through the back there. So then for my next row, I'll be going over this edge thread and under the last one that I went over. So this is just plain weave. And then same with the next dowel. I want to go behind that, but I don't want to go behind the actual frame of the loom. So I can tighten that a little bit, tension it a bit, because I've got that dowel holding it. So I'll need to bring the needle and the yarn through there so that I'm not going around the actual frame of the loom. And then for actually beating, it's just pushing it down. Okay, so looking at my edge thread, I'm going to tuck my tail in. I'm just going to weave that tail in a little bit so it's not hanging off there bothering me. Okay, so I've gone around the back of that dowel and now I'm going over the last thread that I went under. Okay, so tensioning that and just pushing it down. If you're interested in my other toy loom series, you can watch that. I'll have a playlist linked for you down below and at the end of this video as well. And then I want to take that through so that I don't weave around the edge of the frame here. Oops, don't get caught on the knobs at the back. So one of the things I was wondering about when I purchased this loom is, would it be suitable for someone who was looking at getting started in tapestry? Because a lot of tapestry looms are just a basic frame loom that can hold tension well. So, so far, I don't really know whether I would recommend it as a tapestry loom. What I would need to do, and I think I will do this after I've done this basic project to show you, is I'll warp it up with some of my strong tapestry warp and just see how I go. Try some different yarns on there, see what I can come up with, because if a loom like this could hold enough tension, warp tension, for tapestry, then it would be a very affordable loom to get started on tapestry. Just rethreading my needle there, it jumped out. Obviously, with a loom like this, you have one choice for your set, as far apart as these notches are. That's what you've got to work with. Whereas something like a dedicated tapestry loom, or even doing tapestry on another type of loom where you can change the set, can be helpful. Having said that, for my own tapestry, I weave it the same set most of the time. But obviously these warps are quite far apart. And that's the only choice that you get with a loom like this. I think maybe if a child was using this, they might find it a little bit tricky. I'm just thinking with the dowel on this side, it's very close to the edge of the frame, and so it's kind of hard to weave around. Like on this side, I've got all this open space. It's really easy to get around that piece of dowel with the tapestry needle, but on this side, you notice I can't just weave right across and then, well, I could go through that way and then come through, so it's more one action. Okay, that's a little bit better. But that could be a little bit tricky for a child. Just see how it's so close that like the wooden needle can only just fit through there. And it would be the same for this one on this side if I had it right across. But I do think this would be really fun for a child, and not just for a child either. Depending on what kind of weaving you like to do. You could find this very enjoyable and relaxing. So my yarn's getting shorter, so I'm going to have to get a new length off soon. I think I can probably get one more pass. The colours are great. I was thinking having the same yarn, the colourful yarn for the warp and the weft, it might look a little bit muddy, but you can actually, but of course it's going to be a weft-faced piece, so what you're mostly seeing is the variegation of the yarn as it changes. So that works out pretty well. It's going to be a really very loose fabric, and as I was saying, that's because of the set, how far apart the warp threads are. Okay, I can get another pass there. It doesn't actually weave up as fast as I thought it might, but I mean that makes sense because it's weft faced. The warps are wide apart, and so it packs down a lot. All right, so I'm just going to weave that end in myself, and I'll just leave it at the back. So I'm weaving it in 1, 2, 3, 4, basically 5 warp threads, and then I'll grab some more yarn. I'll make another little ball. I can see now why they provided 2 balls of yarn, because you actually go through it pretty fast. Okay, so pop that back in my giant needle. I do like this needle. I think I'm going to be using this with my other looms. I can see myself using it with the rigid heddle, or I don't know, doing some inlay. Wouldn't it be handy for inlay maybe? Could be. Okay, so I've got to bring the yarn back in and make sure that I'm following the opposite path to my last pick. And then bring all that yarn through. Another thing I can imagine if a child was using this is, Mom or Grandma, I've tangled my yarn again. Can't you imagine that with these long pieces of yarn? Mum and Grandma are just the most skilled yarn untanglers. It's unbelievable what we can do. All right, there we go. And now I'm going to go under. Oops, now I've followed the wrong path there. See, because in the last weft row, my yarn here went over, there it went under, and yeah, so I've followed the wrong path there. That's okay, I'll pull it out because I've only just started that row anyway. So I need to go actually over this one and then under that one. You just need to pay attention to whether you went over or under with the last one. Hey, I was paying attention, surely I was. But talking and weaving at the same time, it can be distracting. All right, now we'll take the yarn through, and I'm sure it will all be just fine. I'll leave that little tail there. I have to bring that around my dowel at the side. Okay, now I've got the correct pattern, and I'll just weave that little tail in. There we go, and pop that down. So friends, this is pretty straightforward, isn't it? This is a kind of loom that you can pull out of the box and be weaving within 10 minutes if you wanted to. Even with the setup, you could be that fast. So it would make a really good gift for a child because it's something you could set up really quickly. You could do their first warp for them, depending on their age, of course, and abilities, and they could get weaving right away. It'd be very, you know, weaving often seems like a very slow adventure, especially getting your loom set up for actually getting to the weaving. So some children might lose interest in between the setup and the actual weaving part, but with something like this, well, you're almost ready to go straight away. And the colors are really pretty. So that's all it is, friends. Back and forth, back and forth. Then all you have to really think about is how you're going to finish your ends. Well, I could have done some sort of hem stitch at the bottom here. I guess I still could afterwards, but I've sort of pushed my weft right down, so I don't have a lot of space for a hem stitch under there. I could probably still manage it, or I could tie knots at the end. And I'm not sure what I'll do yet. I'll see how I feel once I've got enough fabric for my phone pouch, if the phone pouch turns out. And by the way, I want to point out something too that I was erroneous about. Sometimes I'm wrong. Can you believe it? So when I was looking at the instructions before and I said this would not be long enough for a scarf, it's not long enough for a scarf, and that's not what their instructions said. Their instructions said to weave 2 panels and to join them together. So my apologies. I got carried away and said this loom wouldn't be long enough for a scarf. So it's 2 panels joined together, and that's how they got the picture of the little girl wearing the scarf. So I apologize. Jump to conclusions sometimes. I'm sure this could work on your lap as well. If you found the feet annoying, you could just take them off to work on your lap. That would work fine. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of music now. So you can watch me weave, and I might even change positions from here so that I can have a sit down and relax a little bit more while I'm doing this. And as I said, this loom will be linked underneath. Any purchases that you make, when I have some links like this underneath, they're affiliate links, and it just means that if you purchase that, I get a very small commission at no extra cost to you, and it's just a nice way of being able to say thank you for doing videos like this and helping me to continue to make free content here on YouTube. All right, let's change positions so that I can rest my legs. the amount that I've woven there. That's my phone, so I'm thinking it's like of a phone cozy kind of thing. And I think that I've woven enough, at least lengthways, to do that. And so I'm going to take this warp off the loom. So there's no untensioning to do, like you don't have to take off any tension because you can't. So it's just a matter of beginning. You can take the dowel pieces out if you can get them out easily enough. And then as you move those, you'll be able to start taking off your other loops. Now you did see me hem stitching the top just there before, and I also did hem stitch the bottom, but that wasn't on camera. All right, I think if I remove this top loop and then pull the dowel out, and then I can start pulling off these little loops. And my weft is going to be held there by the hem stitch. And then I can pull off the top loops as well. Yeah, cut that end piece of yarn that I had tied to the loom. And then I can grab this dowel out as well. Grab the other dowel. And then I've got my finished piece of fabric, which is quite nice. Actually, it's thicker than I thought, and it's kind of springier than I thought. But it's cool, it's good. I have a little more space on this side because remember how I tied my other warp thread? I tried to tie it down here so that I could have a continuation of the warp, but it was proving too difficult to tie there, so I took it back up to the top. But that really spaced out that part of the warp a bit too much, so now I've got loops there. I could kind of counteract that by turning the fabric around and using it that way if I wanted to, and then I could have the loops at the bottom, or I could kind of encase them in a seam or something. But I think I'm just gonna go with it, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think I'll probably have just enough fabric there widthwise to do my phone cozy. My phone's actually in there at the moment. And there you go, that's proof that my phone's in there. It just got a message. And hopefully those loops aren't going to be a problem. I'm going to kind of, I haven't decided actually whether I do a mattress stitch there or whether I do a different sewing stitch. And I also don't know whether I could have the seam on the back. That's one thing I could do. That might work better, to have the seam on the back. Anyway, I'm going to have a play around with it and see what I think to finish off the cozy. One thing I did want to point out, while I was weaving, I moved to the other table so that I could sit down. And I noticed that as I was weaving that the loom was wobbling. And I thought, oh, it's just my table because, you know, it's a very old vintage table that I use and it's not altogether even. But then I've brought the loom back over here now that I've got the piece off, and I can see that it does actually have a wobble. And I've tried tightening and retightening these bolts at the bottom, thinking that that might make some sort of difference, but it actually hasn't. So I can't say whether every one of the looms is like that or whether it's just this one, like this has got this weird funky warped piece of dowel. So I don't know, but I wanted to share that with you. I've put a rough plan together for how I'm going to do this phone cozy. So that is my phone there, and the basic idea is to just fold over in half to sew down one edge, and I'm not sure at this point whether I'm going to leave the little loops down there as kind of a cute and quirky piece of the phone cozy, or whether I will sew them to the inside. I do have to sew a seam across here. So I've got the choice of whether I put them on the inside or the outside. And then for these top pieces, there's a couple of things I could do there as well. So that is all hem stitch. This end needs to stay open so I can get the phone in and out. If I don't want those pieces there, I can sew them back down into the work so that they go down like that. And so I'll just have a neat clean edge at the top. Another thing I could do is if I wanted to make sort of straps or handles, I could use these and plait them together or something like that to make handles. So I haven't decided on that yet, but I'll have to decide on that before I actually start sewing the seam. Otherwise it's going to be hard for me to needle weave those back down. I need to do that first so that they are all gone, like all needle woven down, by the time I do this other seam. Anyway, I will make up my mind and you'll be able to see the results. All right, my first task here is I've got these long loops. Obviously they are part of the warp, and I'm just going to cut the loops and I'm going to needle weave them back into the work to hide them. Because this is a really thick and lofty kind of fabric, this will be quite an easy task to hide these. And I don't have to needle weave the whole length in. That's not necessary. I'll just do a couple of inches worth. That will secure them well enough for the job. Okay, so before I do anything else with this piece of fabric, that is what I need to do. I've got my beloved tapestry needle here, which is perfect for the job and so many other jobs. And then I'm just going to work my way up into the work. About that far. It's about the length of the needle really. I'll just pull that through. I'm not going to pull it super tight. I just want to snug it up with the bottom edge here. And that's one end done. I've got a spare end here as well. That's a different length to the others. That was a leftover, so we'll get rid of that now. And then, so all I have to do is just continue on doing the rest of these threads. This is a nice, quiet, relaxing activity. So I will just get on with that task and I'll check back in with you once all of those ends are woven in. Normally I would just take probably one loop at a time, but here I'm going to take a couple because it's weft face, so our wefts are really close together, and so I'm fine to just take a couple of loops at a time to get the job done. Okay, so that's done. I just need to knot that off at the top. Looks kind of like a really big floppy sock at the moment. And again, I'm just going to bury my knot inside, cut off the excess, and then I've just got my bottom part to deal with. And also, this is how my join turned out. It's a little bit messy, but it's actually not as messy as I thought it would be. There's a little tail to cut off there. Yeah, it looks better than I thought it would, so that's good. So what I'm doing with that seam, rather than having it at the side where it's going to be a little bit bulkier, I can put it to the back and have it there, and then this would be the front. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And then for this bottom part, well, these little loops, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck them to the inside as I stitch this bottom part up together. That would be an easy way to deal with it, and it's not going to affect anything, those loops just sitting on the inside of the cozy, so that's what I'm going to do. And it's going to be easy enough just to tuck them in as I go, I think. So I'll tuck the first two in. Then I'll take my needle in so I can bury my knot inside. So that's not going to be visible. And again, I'm going to do a kind of a mattress stitch here, which is not really going to be very visible because of this yarn, the way the yarn is. So thick, so colourful, and the colour's changing all the time. So that just suits this kind of yarn. And then just tuck the next two in as I go. This time I'm just taking one loop at a time because I'm at the bottom of the warp now. I'm not stitching up the weft. Okay, how are we going here? I have to keep track of where I'm at. Make sure I've got bits tucked in that I don't want to be seen. Okay. Tuck the next bits in, the last bits actually. Doesn't take very long to get to the other side when you've got this thick yarn. And that is, once I get to the other side, that is the, should we call it a phone sock? That is the phone sock finished. If you would like to see me try some tapestry on this loom, let me know about it in the comments, because I'll make videos for people who are interested, basically. If you're not interested, then I won't bother taking the time. But I'm thinking someone at least is going to say that they're interested. So that would be me warping up this same loom, this Melissa and Doug loom, with some good tapestry yarn and trying to do a half decent tapestry on it. See how that turns out. Last tail to cut off. Okay, and now we have the phone cozy. Could also be a hand warmer. Hey, look at that. As long as you don't need to use your fingers for anything, it'll work out just fine. That just gave me another idea though. If I left that open, that would totally be a wrist warmer. And I can tell you it's very, very warm. So if you made 2 of those, left the ends open, sewed up the one seam at the back, there you go. Fantastic pair of wrist warmers. Don't forget that if you are interested in this loom, I'm going to leave a link for it down below. And if you're interested in my other toy loom videos, I will also have the playlist link down below. I think you're really going to love those ones. Thanks for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this video and this project. And until next time, happy weaving.